10 minutes after my divorce became final, I was in the back of a cab headed for the airport with 2 children, 2 suitcases, and every document that mattered in a blue folder on my lap. 5-year-old Lily leaned against my shoulder. 3-year-old Noah was asleep across my chest, one warm hand curled into the fabric of my coat. My ex-husband, Ethan, was going in the opposite direction. He was headed back to the apartment where we had lived for 6 years, because Vanessa had a prenatal appointment that afternoon and, as he had reminded me before we left the courthouse, she had been under a lot of stress lately. Vanessa was carrying his child. Until a few months earlier, she had been the woman his mother hired to help around the house after knee surgery. Now she was living in my old bedroom. My phone buzzed just as the cab merged onto the highway. "Ethan, when you land, send me the kids' new numbers. Maybe hold off on video calls for the first few days. Vanessa has a lot going on." I read the message once and turned the phone face down. The marriage had ended less than 15 minutes earlier, and he was already asking me to make his new life more convenient. He probably thought I was leaving in shock. A wounded wife making a dramatic exit. A woman who had lost her husband and had no idea what to do next. He had no idea I had been preparing for this flight for more than 2 months. He also did not know that 12 years earlier, I had once been supposed to go to France. I had not made it then. This time, I intended to. Lily stirred beside me and looked out at the blur of overpasses and office buildings. "Mom?" "Yeah? Are we really going to France?" "We really are. For a long time?" "If everything works out, yes." She thought about that. At 5, she had already learned to think before asking the questions that scared her. "Will Dad come find us?" I looked down at the little fingers gripping my sleeve. "He knows where we'll be." It was not the answer she wanted, but it was the truest one I had. Half an hour earlier, those same fingers had been wrapped around my sleeve in a conference room beside the courthouse. The judge had already approved our divorce settlement and parenting plan. What remained in the conference room were the final copies and Ethan's separately notarized consent for me to relocate internationally with the children, a document I would need for travel, school enrollment, and the visa process. That last document was the one I had feared most. My attorney had warned me that if Ethan objected, moving the children abroad could become a long and expensive fight. I had spent nights imagining him refusing out of anger, pride, or simply because he could. Instead, he skimmed the first page and asked, "The holiday visits stay the same as we discussed?" His attorney nodded. "And the weekly calls?" "Yes." Ethan signed. No argument. No hesitation. I stared at his name on the bottom of the page and felt colder than I had during any of our fights. The hardest permission to get had turned out to be easy because he wanted us gone almost as much as I wanted to leave. I did not fight him for the apartment. There was still a mortgage on it, and ownership had always been tangled with money his parents contributed toward the down payment. I took my personal savings, the money my mother had left me, my own belongings, and everything the children needed. When it was over, Ethan leaned back in his chair and exhaled. "This is better for everyone, Claire." I looked at him. "Do you know what school Lily starts next month?" His expression changed. "You already handled that, didn't you?" That was answer enough. He gathered his papers and checked the time. "I have to go. Vanessa's appointment is at 3. Lily stood when he reached the door. "Dad." He turned. "Be good for Mom, okay?" Then he left. He did not hug her. He did not kiss Noah goodbye. He did not even walk back across the room. The door closed, and Lily looked up at me. Why didn't Dad hug me? There are questions adults spend years avoiding that children ask in 6 words. I crouched in front of her and zipped her coat. "I don't know, sweetheart." It was one of the few times in my life I had admitted that I did not have an answer. By the time we reached the airport, I had one last message from Margaret, Ethan's mother. "Leaving today is probably best. Vanessa needs a calm environment right now. I'll box up anything you left behind. You can have someone collect it later." No insult. No dramatic accusation. Somehow that made it worse. I had lived in that apartment for 6 years. My children had learned to walk there. I had marked their heights in pencil inside a closet door because Margaret thought drawing on visible walls looked messy. There was milk in the refrigerator I had bought 2 days earlier. And now we were being discussed like furniture that had not been removed on schedule. I switched off my phone. At the gate, Lily sat beside me hugging a faded stuffed rabbit. "Do we know anyone in France?" she asked. "Maya. Aunt Maya." "Yes." "Anyone else?" "Not yet." She frowned. "What if we get lost?" "We probably will." Her eyes widened. I smiled for the first time that day. "Then we ask for directions. If we don't know how to say something, we learn. If we take the wrong train, we get off and try again." She studied my face. "Then you don't be scared either." That nearly broke me. On the plane, after both children were asleep, I finally let myself think about how France had first entered my life. I was 22 and studying French and international business. I was good at both, better than I had ever been at anything that came later. My professors encouraged me to apply for an exchange program in Lyon, and when the results came out, my name was at the top of the list. I found student housing. I made a packing list. I bought a second-hand suitcase because my mother said the expensive ones all broke eventually anyway. 3 months before I was supposed to leave, she was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. I withdrew from the program and went home. For the last months of her life, the world narrowed to hospital hallways, medication schedules, paper cups of bad coffee, and the sound of machines humming in the dark. My mother never forgave herself for the fact that I stayed. One afternoon, when she still had enough strength to sit up, she took my hand and said, "Claire, if you get another chance someday, go see the place you wanted to see." I told her there would be other chances. At 22, you believe time is generous. After she died, I finished school, found a job, and met Ethan. France became a folder at the bottom of a closet. In the beginning, Ethan was easy to love. He remembered how I took my coffee. He waited outside my office when I worked late. He used to bring me sandwiches because I forgot to eat when I was busy. When I became pregnant with Lily, he told me I did not have to choose between a career and being a good mother. "Take a couple of years," he said. "Your French isn't going anywhere. Your degree isn't going anywhere. I can carry us for a while." Margaret agreed. "Those first years matter," she told me. "And childcare costs almost as much as you make anyway." It sounded practical. I quit my job planning to return in 2 years. Then Noah came along. Margaret's knee deteriorated. Ethan's father started having blood pressure problems. One child was always sick, teething, refusing sleep, starting preschool, or needing some new appointment. There was always one good reason to wait another 6 months. 6 years disappeared that way. By then, I could tell you which shirt Ethan needed for a client dinner, what time Margaret took her medication, which foods Noah refused to eat unless I cut them into triangles, and exactly how high Lily's fever could climb before she became frighteningly quiet. What I could not tell you is what I would put on a resume. I had become good at carrying everyone else's life and strangely embarrassed by the idea of having needs of my own. Vanessa entered our house during Margaret's recovery from knee surgery. She was not a nanny. She was a household assistant recommended by one of Margaret's friends, there mostly to drive her to physical therapy, pick up groceries, and help with errands on the days I could not be in 3 places at once. Vanessa was 30, efficient, soft-spoken, and easy to like. I did like her. Once, when I had the flu, she picked up Lily and Noah, made soup, and left medicine on the counter before going home. For months I thought of her as help I was lucky to have. Then one night Ethan told me he had a company dinner and would be home late. Around 1 in the morning, a credit card notification appeared on my phone from a hotel bar across town. For weeks, things had been off. His phone was always face down. He took it into the shower. Sometimes I would ask him a question and watch him take several seconds to return to the room. I had no proof. I drove to the hotel anyway. I did not go inside. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Ethan and Vanessa came through the hotel doors together. It was cold. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, and he reached up and wrapped her scarf properly around her neck. Then he kissed her. What hurt most was not the kiss. It was how familiar the gesture looked. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, no panic. It did not look like a first mistake. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel until my fingers hurt. The next morning, Ethan came home smelling like hotel soap and said he had been too drunk to drive, so he had slept in a male coworker's room. Which coworker? I asked. He gave me a name immediately. I nodded. I did not confront him. That surprised even me. I had spent years believing that if something terrible happened to my marriage, I would demand answers, scream, cry, throw something. Instead, I opened a new email account, photographed financial statements, checked our joint accounts, and called an attorney. 2 months later, Vanessa was pregnant and secrecy became pointless. Ethan sat across from me at our dining table. I know this is unfair to you, he said. But it happened. I'm going to take responsibility. For which family? I asked. He looked away. What about Lily and Noah? His jaw tightened. Why do you have to drag the kids into this? That was the moment I stopped waiting for him to understand what he had done. He had already dragged them into it. He just did not want their existence to complicate the story he was telling himself about love and responsibility. While gathering documents for the divorce, I found the old France folder. The exchange acceptance letter was yellow around the edges. Beneath it was a note in my mother's handwriting. If you get another chance, go where you wanted to go. I sat on the closet floor for a long time. The next morning, I called Maya. We had been closest in college. After graduation, she moved to Paris, married, divorced, opened a small business, closed it, started another one, and somehow remained the kind of person who answered the phone as if no time had passed. I told her about Ethan, Vanessa, the pregnancy, the divorce. Maya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. Do you want to come here? Yes. Then stop asking yourself whether you're allowed to want that and start preparing. No lecture about saving the marriage for the children. No warning that I might regret leaving. No request that I explain why I had tolerated so much for so long. Just start preparing. So I did. Over the next 2 months, with help from my attorney and an immigration advisor, I secured a place in a Paris-based French language and international business return-to-work program. I completed the visa process for myself and the children, arranged school and childcare, found temporary housing near Maya, and negotiated the relocation terms with Ethan's attorney. It was exhausting, but it was not impulsive. By the time our plane landed at Charles de Gaulle, I had spent weeks doing the frightening work before the frightening move. Maya was waiting beyond baggage claim. She took one look at me and said, "What happened to your face?" I stared at her. "You got skinny," she said. "Not stylish skinny. Court deposition skinny." I laughed, and then she hugged me. I had held myself together through the final hearing, the airport, the overnight flight, and 2 children melting down over airplane food. In Maya's arms, I almost collapsed. Paris, unfortunately, did not care that I had finally arrived. It was beautiful in exactly the ways cities are beautiful when you are not the one trying to build a life inside them. The first apartment I could afford was a little over 40 square meters, up several flights of stairs in an older building with unreliable heat and windows that rattled when buses went by. But the living room caught afternoon sun. The first day we moved in, Lily ran from the tiny bedroom to the kitchen and back again. "Is this ours?" she asked. "For now. Our home." I looked around at unpacked boxes, one borrowed lamp, and a kitchen table Maya had found online for almost nothing. "Yes." "Does Dad know where it is?" "Yes." She nodded and went to show Noah which corner belonged to his toys. That night, after they fell asleep, I opened my laptop and calculated our expenses. Rent, deposit, transportation, childcare, insurance, school costs, food. I had believed my savings could last 6 months if I was careful. On paper, after the real numbers were in front of me, I had closer to 3 months before I needed reliable income. The next afternoon, Maya came over, put a bank card on the table, and pushed it toward me. "There's money in that account. Use it if you need it. Pay me back whenever. I pushed it back. No, Claire. I have savings. You have 2 kids and no job. I said I'm fine. She stared at me. I'm not offering charity. I know. Then why are you acting like accepting help is a moral failure? I had no answer I was willing to say out loud. The truth was that I had spent years learning not to expect anyone to notice when I was overwhelmed. Once you become the person who handles everything, being helped can feel strangely dangerous. It means admitting you are not in control. I left the card on the table. The first week after that conversation, I tried to prove Maya wrong. I scheduled 2 interviews on the same day, convinced that if I looked organized enough, sounded fluent enough, and never mentioned how frightened I was about money, I could force my old life to restart on command. The first interview was for an administrative position at a small import company. The woman across from me switched from French to English when I hesitated over a technical phrase. I was grateful for exactly 3 seconds, and then ashamed that I was grateful. She asked what software I had used in my last job. I named a system that had already been replaced. She asked about my most recent client portfolio. I had none. Then she looked at the dates on my resume. 6 years. I stayed home with my children. She nodded politely. And you've kept up with the industry? There are questions that are not cruel and still make you feel exposed. I gave the best answer I could. I talked about my degree, my old experience, the language courses I was taking, and how quickly I learned. She thanked me for coming. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I knew I would not hear from her again. The second interview was worse because I knew more. I could hear every pause before the interviewer found a gentler way to say I was too far behind. That evening, I still had to collect Noah, stop at the pharmacy, answer a school form I barely understood, and figure out why our bank had frozen an online transfer because one document in my file had not been updated. At the bank, the clerk explained the problem twice. I understood the words individually and somehow not the sentence. Behind me, Noah started crying because he was tired. Lily kept asking if we were going to miss dinner. A man in line sighed loudly. I walked outside with both children and stood under an awning in the rain, holding a folder of documents against my chest. For one ugly minute, I wanted someone else to take over. Not Ethan specifically. I wanted the old illusion that there was another adult somewhere whose job was to know what to do. Then Lily tugged my sleeve. Mom, did we do it wrong? I looked at her wet hair and Noah's red face. No, I said. We just have to go back tomorrow. That became our life for a while. Not dramatic failure. Repetition. Going back tomorrow. Asking again. Filling out the form again. Learning the phrase I should have known yesterday. By the time I accepted the restaurant job, I was no longer offended by the idea that rebuilding might begin with work that had nothing to do with the career I used to have. I was mostly relieved someone had said yes. For the next several weeks, I attended language classes and applied for every job I could reasonably do. More than 20 applications produced a handful of interviews. Everyone was polite. Your language skills are promising. You've been out of the workforce for quite a while. We're looking for more recent experience. 6 years of running a household, caring for 2 children, coordinating medical appointments, managing budgets, and solving problems no one else saw appeared on a resume as a blank space. Eventually, through a friend of Maya's, I got a job at a busy Asian restaurant. I worked the front, took orders, ran food, and learned how fast people could speak French when they were hungry and impatient. My first week, I nearly caused a serious problem. A family had clearly told me that their son had a severe peanut allergy. I misunderstood the name of a dish and brought something to the table containing peanut sauce. His mother caught it before he ate any. No one was hurt. That did not make my mistake feel small. The manager pulled me aside and told me plainly that there could not be a second incident. After closing, I sat in the staff room staring at the floor until the tears came. For the first time since arriving, I thought about going back. Not back to Ethan. Back to a place where I could understand every sign, every school email, every angry customer, every medical form. A place where basic competence did not feel like something I had to earn again each morning. Maya found me there. She put the menu and the allergen chart in front of me. Finished crying? I nodded. Good. Memorize these. I looked up at her. You are not incapable, she said. You are rusty. Then she leaned against the table. And stop confusing suffering alone with independence. If you need help, ask. That part hurt more. Because she was right. So I studied. I listened to French news on the train. I wrote down phrases customers used that I did not understand. I made vocabulary lists after the children went to bed. I forced myself to speak even when I knew my grammar was not perfect. Slowly, the city stopped sounding like one long sentence spoken too fast. A few months later, I could handle most customers without panicking. Then Lily began to fall apart. Looking back, there had been signs before the teacher called. Lily had started taking longer to get dressed in the mornings. Twice in 1 week, she said her stomach hurt, only to be perfectly fine by Saturday. She stopped telling me stories about school. When I asked who she had played with, she would say, I don't remember. One afternoon, I found an untouched roll and a wrapped piece of cheese in the bottom of her backpack. The next day there was another. Didn't you like lunch? I asked. I wasn't hungry. You're always hungry. She shrugged and went to find Noah. A few nights later, I heard whispering after bedtime and found her explaining something to her stuffed rabbit in English. She stopped when she saw me. What were you telling him? Nothing. Lily. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. He doesn't know French either. I sat on the edge of the bed. For weeks I had been measuring our progress by practical things. Rent paid. Job found. New vocabulary memorized. Children delivered to the right places at the right times. I had not noticed that my daughter had been measuring Paris by how many hours she had to spend each day without understanding the people around her. The next morning, she cried when I reached for her coat. Not loudly. Lily almost never cried loudly. She simply backed away and said, Can I stay home today? I almost said yes. I had a shift. I needed the money. Missing school would not solve the problem. I knew all of that. But for the first time, I saw how easily we have to keep going could become another version of your feelings can wait. I had spent years living inside that sentence. I did not want to hand it to my daughter. So I called the restaurant, said I would be late, and walked Lily to school slowly. I told her I was going to talk to her teacher, and that she did not have to pretend things were fine just to make my life easier. She looked up at me. Are you mad? No. Even if I don't like France yet? That word, yet, was hers, not mine. Even then. Her teacher asked me to come in after school. She understands more than she lets on, the teacher said carefully. But she almost never speaks unless she has to. She eats lunch alone. She watches the other children more than she joins them. That afternoon, I found Lily sitting by herself near the edge of the schoolyard with her backpack in her lap. She smiled when she saw me, but it was the kind of smile children use when they do not want adults asking questions. On the train home, she barely spoke. That night, after Noah's bath, she stood in the kitchen doorway. Mom? Yeah? When are we going back? I stopped wiping the counter. Back where? Home. My chest tightened. She looked down at her socks. I don't understand what everyone says. At lunch, nobody sits with me. I miss Grandma. Then, almost too quietly to hear, I miss Dad too. I did not sleep much that night. Until then, every hardship had been mine to accept. I had chosen Paris. I had chosen uncertainty. I could tell myself that fear was the price of rebuilding. Lily had not chosen any of it. Neither had Noah. The next morning, an email from Ethan arrived. How are the kids settling in? I stared at it for a long time before writing, still adjusting. His answer came quickly. If it's too much to manage on your own, they could come back for a while. Mom can help. I expected anger. What I felt was panic. Not because I thought he could simply take them. The agreement was clear. But because one part of me still believed that if I struggled openly, Ethan would get to say he had been right about me. That I could not do this. That I had mistaken running away for rebuilding. Old Claire would have hidden Lily's problem and worked harder. Instead, that afternoon, I went back to the school and said, she needs help, and I don't know what kind. Her teacher arranged additional language support and paired her during lunch with an older bilingual student who spoke English and could help bridge the gap while Lily's French caught up. I called Maya and asked if she could pick up the children one afternoon a week. There was a pause on the line. "Did you just ask me for help? Don't ruin it." She laughed. "Tuesday." I nearly said, "Only if it isn't inconvenient." I stopped myself. "Thank you." That one free afternoon changed more than I expected. I used some of it for work, but some of it I spent simply being present when I collected Lily on the other days instead of walking beside her while calculating bills in my head. We made a game of learning 3 new French words on the way home. She taught me words from school. I taught her words I heard at the restaurant. 6 weeks later, she let go of my hand at the school gate and ran toward 2 girls from her class. Halfway across the courtyard, she turned and shouted in French, "Mom, are we having pasta at home tonight?" I only understood because I knew the vocabulary. But what stayed with me was the word home. She meant the small apartment with the rattling windows, not the place we had left. Around that same time, a regular customer at the restaurant overheard me on the phone with a supplier who had delivered the wrong order. The invoice included an international shipping term that did not match the agreement, and I pointed it out before the manager approved payment. Afterward, the customer asked, "Did you work in trade?" I studied international business. I worked in the field for about 2 years before I had children. "Why are you here?" I laughed awkwardly. Long story. He did not offer me a magical job or hand me a business card that changed my life. He simply mentioned a 1-year international business returnship program designed for people re-entering the workforce after a long break. It included company placements. "You should look at it," he said. "Your French is coming back. So is the rest." That night, I researched the program until nearly 2 in the morning. The next day, I showed Maya. "Do you want it?" she asked. "Yes." "Then apply." I scrolled to the tuition fees. If I enroll, I'll have to reduce my shifts. So I'll make less money while spending more. For a week, I told everyone I was still thinking. Then the acceptance email arrived. I opened it during a restaurant break and read the first line so many times that one of the cooks asked whether someone had died. For about 10 seconds, I was 22 again. I could see the exchange letter from Lion, the suitcase on my bedroom floor, my mother standing in the doorway telling me not to pack too many shoes. Then I opened the tuition page and became 34 again. I went home that night and made a new budget. If I reduced my shifts enough to keep up with the program, the margin between us and real trouble became painfully small. 1 sick child, 1 broken appliance, 1 unexpected fee, and the numbers stopped working. Maya offered the card again. I refused again. This time she did not argue. She just said, "At some point you're going to have to decide whether you want to be independent or invulnerable. They're not the same thing." I snapped at her. "I am not asking you to finance my life. I know. I'm asking you to stop treating every offered hand like a trap." We did not speak for the rest of the evening. The next day I hated myself for it, but apologizing felt almost as difficult as asking for money. I had spent so long swallowing resentment in my marriage that now, when I finally had the freedom to say no, I sometimes said it too hard. I called Maya. "I'm sorry." "I know. That's an annoying answer." "I know that too." I laughed to spite myself. Then I told her I still did not want the bank card. "Fine," she said. "Then use me for babysitting while you go ask the school what help actually exists." That was different. Not rescue. Not surrender. A bridge. I could live with a bridge. In reality, I was doing what I always did, silently trying to solve every possible problem before allowing anyone to know there was a problem. One night, Maya came over and saw my notebook full of numbers. She picked it up before I could close it. "You have calculated the same 3 months of expenses 12 different ways." "I'm being careful." "No. You're trying to prove you can suffer privately." I reached for the notebook. She held it away from me. "Have you asked the school about grants?" "No." "Payment plans?" "No." "Student work?" "No." "Then you're not solving the problem, Claire. You're worshipping it." I hated that sentence. I also wrote it down later. The next morning, I went to the student services office and asked every embarrassing, practical question I had avoided. I qualified for partial aid. The remaining tuition could be paid in installments. The program had partner companies that hired students part-time. I reduced my restaurant schedule to weekends and a few evenings and enrolled. That year was brutal. Mornings were school drop-offs. Days were classes, group projects, presentations, and business reports. Evenings were restaurant shifts. Nights were homework after the children were asleep. Sometimes I woke at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand and a blanket over my shoulders. Lily had started putting it there. The difference between that exhaustion and the exhaustion of my marriage was not that one was noble and one was not. It was movement. In my old life, I could work until midnight and wake the next morning to the same invisible list. Now, every exam passed, every presentation survived, every new skill relearned left something behind that belonged to me. The first semester also taught me how much confidence can disappear without your noticing. For our first major group project, I was assigned the section on European supply chains. 12 years earlier, I would have volunteered to present it. Now I spent 3 nights rewriting 4 slides because I was terrified someone would ask a question that exposed how outdated I was. On presentation day, one of my classmates texted that he was sick and could not come. He was supposed to present the opening and the financial summary. The professor looked at our group. Who can cover it? No one spoke. My old instinct was immediate. Keep your head down. Do your assigned part. Do not create a chance to fail in public. Then I thought about the restaurant. The bank. Lily walking into school when she did not yet understand the language. I can, I said. My hands shook for the first minute. I lost one French word and had to replace it with a simpler one. Halfway through, someone asked about a cost assumption I had not prepared for. I answered anyway. Not perfectly. Correctly enough. After class, the professor stopped me. You know this material better than you think you do. I almost told her that someone had said a version of that to me months earlier in a restaurant staff room. Instead, I went outside and called Lily. How was school? I asked. Good. I read out loud today. I leaned against the wall and laughed. So did I. During this time, Ethan began calling the children regularly. He had kept up with child support from the beginning, even when his contact was inconsistent. Months into our move, perhaps because the distance finally felt real to him, he started scheduling the weekly video calls himself instead of waiting for me to remind him. I let him. He had failed me as a husband. I did not believe that gave me the right to decide he could never learn to be a better father. On one of the first regular calls, Lily held up a worksheet and proudly read a sentence in French. Noah stared at Ethan's face on the screen. Then he asked, "Who are you?" No one spoke for a second. Ethan's smile disappeared. I pulled Noah onto my lap. "That's Dad." Noah nodded, accepted the information, and wandered off to find a toy. Ethan looked at me through the screen. Does he really not remember me? I did not answer the question for him. But after that call, he changed. He came prepared with stories the children liked. He remembered school events. He sent birthday packages early instead of late. When holiday visits approached, he handled the travel arrangements according to the agreement without making me chase him. I noticed. I also understood something I had been unable to understand when we were married. People can improve in one role without becoming safe again in another. His effort as a father did not erase what he had done as a husband. And my ability to acknowledge the effort did not require me to reopen the marriage. Near the end of my program, I earned an internship at an international trade company. It was the first time in 6 years that someone had looked at me and seen a professional before seeing a mother with a long employment gap. A week before the internship began, Ethan emailed. I'll be in Paris for work next month. I'd like to see the kids. Then, beneath it, there's something I want to talk to you about too. I read that line 3 times. Our conversations had been about the children for more than a year. Nothing else. My mind immediately went to custody. Had he changed his mind about the relocation? Did he want the children back for longer periods? Had something happened with his mother? I dug out the agreement and read it from beginning to end. Then I called my attorney. She listened and said, "Claire, breathe. He can ask for anything. That doesn't mean he can rearrange the children's lives because he's suddenly uncomfortable with the choices he made. You have complied with the agreement. The kids are settled. Stop giving him authority he no longer has." After I hung up, I sat with that sentence. Stop giving him authority he no longer has. I had crossed an ocean, built a new routine, learned a new city, and still some part of me reacted to Ethan's appearance like a weather warning. We met at a cafe near the Seine. I arrived early because I always arrived early when I was anxious. Lily had changed outfits twice that morning. Noah kept asking whether Dad would look the same on a real chair as he did on a screen. Ethan came through the door carrying 2 small gift bags and stopped when he saw them. For a second, nobody moved. Then Lily ran to him. He crouched and hugged her so hard her feet left the floor. The sight hit me in a place I had not prepared for. I remembered the courthouse door. Her small voice asking why he had not hugged her. I wondered if Ethan remembered it too. Noah stayed beside me. Ethan did not force him. He sat back on his heels and said, "Hey, buddy. I brought the dinosaur you showed me on the video call. But you don't have to come over here until you want to." Noah studied him, then studied the bag. The dinosaur won first. 20 minutes later, Noah was beside him showing him a drawing. I moved to a table across the room with my internship paperwork and tried not to monitor every interaction. Ethan asked Lily about school and listened to the answer. He knew the name of her teacher. He remembered that Noah hated orange juice with pulp. He had done the work of learning details that once would have been stored automatically in my head for him. Part of me resented that it had taken losing the daily access to his children for him to become attentive. Another part was simply glad he had become attentive at all. Both things could be true. After lunch, he took them for a short walk along the river while I stayed close enough to satisfy every cautious instinct I had. When they returned, Lily was telling him a story with her hands. Noah was holding Ethan's finger. I had expected that sight to make me jealous of the life we might have had. It did not. It made me wish, very briefly and very specifically, that this version of Ethan had existed when the children still lived down the hall from him. When the children went to the restroom together, Ethan came to my table. "You look different," he said. "I probably am. I heard you're finishing a business program." "Almost." He looked at the internship documents beside my laptop. "I didn't know you still wanted to do this kind of work." I met his eyes. "I told you." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I did not list the conversations he had forgotten. The nights I had said I wanted to take a course and he told me the timing was bad. The mornings I had mentioned childcare so I could return to work and he had said it was an unnecessary expense. The times I had talked about French and international trade and watched his attention drift to his phone. The fact that he did not remember was part of the answer. He turned his coffee cup slowly between his hands. "Vanessa and I are separated." That surprised me. Not because I believed they had some perfect love story, but because for a long time I had imagined that hearing their relationship had failed would feel like justice. Instead, it felt like information about 2 people I no longer knew very well. "We've been living separately for 4 months," he said. "She moved into a place near her sister. I still see the baby. I'm not telling you this because I think it makes what I did okay. The old version of me would have wanted details. Who left first? Did Margaret apologize? Did Vanessa ever accuse him of doing to her what he had done to me?" The questions appeared and then passed. I did not ask any of them. Ethan looked toward the hallway where Lily and Noah had disappeared. "I thought changing the person would change the life," he said. It didn't. For years, he had treated our problems as if they came from the wrong woman asking too much of him. Vanessa had once represented an easier life because she existed outside the chores, the sick children, the school forms, and the bills. Then she became part of an ordinary household too. Ordinary life had followed him. It usually does. He told me only the broad outlines. Life after the baby had been harder than they expected. Vanessa and Margaret fought. His company had gone through a rough year. The simple future he had imagined had become another complicated adult life. He did not cry or blame Vanessa. To his credit, he did not try to make himself the victim. Finally he said, "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't handled everything the way I did. We still would have ended." He looked up. "Why are you so sure?" "Because the affair was the last thing that happened, not the first problem." He waited. I said, "For years, my life was always the thing that could wait. My work could wait. My classes could wait. My plans could wait. We got used to that. I got used to it too." He looked down. For once, he did not argue. After a long silence, he asked, "Have you ever thought about coming back?" I knew he did not mean for a visit. No. The word was much lighter than revenge had ever been in my imagination. He nodded once. "What if I said I regret it?" "That's yours to live with." I softened my voice, because cruelty would not have made me stronger. "You've been showing up for the kids. I'm glad you are. They need that. But being a better father now doesn't change what happened between us." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Claire." I had waited for those words in the hotel parking lot. I had waited for them after his first lie. I had waited for them when Vanessa's pregnancy became impossible to hide. By the time they arrived, they no longer held the power I had once given them. I nodded. "I know." When Lily and Noah came back, we packed their things and walked outside together. Lily slipped her hand into mine. "Is Dad coming again?" "He can visit. We'll plan it." "Do we have to go back?" "No." She visibly relaxed. "Okay, hurry up. Maya said she's eating at our house tonight." Our house. She said it without thinking. The internship itself was less cinematic than I had imagined and more important. On my second week, a shipment for one of our smaller clients was held because documents from 2 offices did not match. My supervisor was in meetings. The client was angry. The freight agent kept replying to the wrong email thread. For 10 minutes, I felt the old panic, the restaurant allergy ticket, the bank clerk, every moment when not knowing something had made me feel like an imposter. Then I stopped apologizing for being new and started solving the problem. I called the freight agent. I compared the invoice with the purchase order. I found the mismatched reference number, got the corrected document approved, and sent the client a timeline instead of another vague apology. At the end of the day, my supervisor stopped beside my desk. "Good catch." 2 words. I carried them home like a medal. That evening Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table while Noah built a crooked tower from blocks. I opened my laptop to check one last message, then closed it again. "What?" Lily asked. "Nothing. You're smiling." "I did something well at work today." She nodded as if this were obvious. "You always do things well. Children can believe things about you years before you are ready to believe them yourself." After my internship ended, the company offered me a permanent project coordinator position. It was not glamorous. The salary was ordinary. The title would not impress anyone at a dinner party. I read the offer email 3 times while sitting on a bench in a metro station. 6 years after leaving the workforce, I had been hired again because of what I could do. When my first salary arrived, I took Lily and Noah out for ice cream. "What are we celebrating?" Lily asked. "My first real paycheck back." She grinned. "Is that a holiday?" "It is now." Over the next few years, I moved from project coordination into managing several European client accounts. Money stopped being a countdown measured in months. We could plan a holiday without recalculating rent. Lily took music lessons for a while, then abandoned them for swimming. Noah discovered guitar and decided, for several months, that he was going to become famous. Life became ordinary. That was one of the best things that ever happened to us. I met Daniel during those years. He was a finance manager on another team, divorced, with a daughter a little older than Lily. We knew each other for months before we went on an actual date. He was considerate without trying to manage me. If I had to leave at 5:30 for the children, he did not act as if I were less serious about work. If Noah was sick, he did not make a performance out of covering a call for me. I liked him, which made me suspicious of myself. A few months after we started dating, Daniel suggested a weekend outside the city. Not a romantic escape for 2. A family weekend, separate rooms, children included. I refused before he had finished explaining. "No. The kids aren't spending the night around someone they barely know. His expression tightened. I didn't ask them to. I stopped. I asked if we could plan something everyone is comfortable with, he said. You can say no, but you don't have to answer a question I didn't ask. I felt my defenses rise. He saw it too. I'm not asking you to trust me quickly, he said. But if we do this, you can't make me stand trial for things another man did. I was furious. Mostly because he was right. We argued that night. It was our first real fight. He did not rescue me from my fear, and I did not become magically healed because he was patient. We learned each other slowly. I learned that protecting myself did not require locking every door. He learned that sometimes my first reaction came from an old emergency rather than the present moment. 2 years later, he proposed. By then, I had my own income, my own career, my own friends, my own routines, and a life that did not collapse if a man walked out of it. I said yes because I wanted to marry him, not because I needed marriage to feel safe. We had a small civil ceremony. Maya cried before I did. The 3 children argued outside the building over who was supposed to hold the rings. Ethan remained part of Lily and Noah's lives. Over time, he became far more consistent than he had been during the year our marriage ended. He called when he said he would. He visited when schedules allowed. He remembered birthdays and school milestones. I never interfered with that. A person can make an unforgivable choice in one relationship and still learn to behave better in another. That did not mean I owed him my return. Years later, while unpacking boxes after another move, I found my mother's old note again. The paper had yellowed. Her handwriting had not changed. If you get another chance, go where you wanted to go. I sat on the floor with the note in my hand and thought about the woman I had been the day of the divorce. 34 years old. A 3-year-old in her arms. A 5-year-old holding her sleeve. No stable job. No certainty that Paris would work. No guarantee that leaving would make life better. I would never go back and tell her not to be afraid. She had good reasons to be afraid. I would tell her something else. Fear is not proof that the door in front of you is the wrong one. 12 years earlier, I had stayed behind because someone I loved needed me. 12 years later, I finally left because my children and I needed a life in which I did not always come last. Ethan thought that flight to France was what I did after losing my marriage. He was wrong. It was the life I had missed at 22 finally boarding with me at 34.